Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And if you're interested in a personal consultation, please check out the video description. I will leave the information there. Thank you. So today I wanted to do a video about, well, somewhat of a serious topic, but it is something that I wanted to talk about for some time now. And since I made already, I think, 2 videos on narcissism, I thought it would be a good continuation of that theme, although it's not the happiest theme out there. I think it's useful information. And this is namely the topic of Pluto aspects in synastry and narcissistic abuse. There is a pattern that I have noticed that happens in relationships where there is narcissistic abuse, and that is, without beating around the bush, it is the fact that the victim, quote unquote, oftentimes has his or her Pluto in conjunction to the narcissist's personal planets, especially Mars, the Moon, or the Sun. I would say especially Mars and the Moon. Exactly why this happens, well, I guess I would have to get a little bit into psychology and I guess the theory of narcissism and what it means and how it manifests. Well, assuming that you don't know much about narcissism, it's basically a pathology in which a person has feelings of grandiosity. They also have a really delusional perception of reality by which they are always superior to everybody else. They are characterized by lack of empathy. They are part of something called the dark triad of personalities, which also includes, I think, Machiavellianism and psychopathy. So narcissists, like psychopaths, have no empathy, and they basically are addicted to something called narcissistic supply, which is basically people that they feed off of, quote unquote, energetically. And usually these are people that they abuse, or people who flatter them and worship them, so people that they keep under their spell and use them in various ways. But ultimately, people who are narcissistic cannot really love anybody and basically only use people. And so, well, there is an entire host of characteristics that are typical for narcissists, but these are the general traits that I can think of right now. I'm pretty sure that if you want to go more in depth, you can do that by yourself. There's plenty of sources online. But the bottom line is that narcissistic relationships with a narcissist will certainly imply some level or some form of abuse. And this is, again, something that has more recently come to my attention when I heard the rumors, the allegations about Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood coming forward, and then another ex-girlfriend of Manson's, namely Esme Bianco, coming forward and saying that they were victims of abuse at the hands of Manson. Now, all of this is allegedly, because nothing has actually been proven, and actually, on a personal note, I really hope that it was not true, but things are not looking good. Evidence is stacking up against him. So, I mean, as far as I am concerned, he looks really guilty. And this, well, this was kind of like the cherry on top. Manson's case is not the only one that I looked at when I say these things about the patterns that I've noticed. I have noticed this throughout years. I've noticed this with myself, actually, unfortunately, having my Pluto conjunct to some people's, particularly narcissistic people's, planets triggers their wrath, or like they're targeting you. And especially since I have heard of something in narcissism, I think it was Dr. Ramani's video where she talked about the concept of the truth seer or the truth sayer in a narcissistic family dynamic, which is that these are people, like she put it, that can see through the narcissist's pathology and delusions of grandeur, and basically see through their mask, which is the mask that the narcissist puts on to protect themselves and to control the way that the world perceives them. Because narcissists are basically, their entire lives, they are constructing this mask to hide massive insecurities that they have. And like Dr. Ramani said, these so-called truth seers are people who, from the time that they're very young, are able to see through the narcissist. And there's almost like, in her own words, these people have a certain energy that make them targeted by narcissists. And it really got me thinking now. I don't know, obviously I would have to research these so-called truth seers charts and see what their Pluto aspects were, if there were any Pluto aspects to the narcissist chart. So unfortunately I don't have that kind of data available, but just based on my intuition and based on the somewhat limited experience that I have had and charts that I have seen, I would think that Pluto aspects to the narcissist planets kind of triggers this so-called truth seer dynamic. And these are situations where the person in question, the Pluto person, may not even actually say or do anything to provoke the narcissist, but by simply being in the narcissist's presence, they pose a threat, because it's literally their energy. It's their, even like Dr. Ramani herself said, something like even a slight look from these people can trigger the narcissist rage. And this is because the narcissist can tell instinctively that the truth seer, doesn't fall for his or her BS, sees through the mask. And this is the most threatening thing that the narcissist can go through. The so-called losing of their mask, And so why do I think this is? Well, in astrology, Pluto has to do with personal power. And Pluto is also linked to things like psychology, things like, subconscious energies, instinctive energies, things that are kind of always under the surface. So, and also in tropical astrology, maybe you have heard this, maybe not, but I remember reading that aspects between Pluto and Mars in a personal chart was said to attract abusive situations, even things like rape or things like abuse of all kinds that can take even the most hideous forms. Now, how much of this is true, I'm not really sure, but one thing that I can say is that when it comes to synastry, I've definitely seen that people who have Pluto hard aspects to the partner's personal planets, particularly Mars, tend to attract violence from this partner, especially if the partner is narcissistic. And in my humble opinion, it is because the narcissist feels the power of the Pluto person. And your Pluto, let's say, aspecting someone's Mars, especially Mars, and especially when the narcissist in question is a man. Why? Because Mars is about masculinity. It's sexual energy and masculine sexual energy. So when a woman's Pluto aspects a man's Mars, especially by conjunction, but it can also be square or opposition, this man's Pluto feels threatened because it feels exposed, it feels seen. All of a sudden, his masculinity feels questioned by the inquisitiveness and by the intelligence of Pluto. And the Mars being aggressive, the way that he reacts from the Mars energy, the way that this man will react, is by oftentimes being violent. They will feel somehow threatened on a psychological level by the Pluto person, and as Mars being Mars, it will use violence, or it will use physical intimidation, threats, things like that. It will not play nice. When it comes to, and I've mentioned this in I think other videos, is when it comes to, for instance, Pluto aspecting Venus, that can also take a dark turn when it's the hard aspects, but it's more like Pluto becoming obsessed with Venus and Venus becoming obsessed with Pluto, but it will not necessarily lead to violence. With Mars, on the other hand, being this really raw energy and having to do with a man's self-image of his masculinity and how masculine he is, it is more likely to lead to violence, okay? And, right, I won't get too lengthy into it. I have a lot of other theories, but, well, just very shortly, I think another thing that happens is that oftentimes men who are narcissistic, they tend to have complexes around their masculinity. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I've seen this a lot of the times, where men have like a weak Mars placement or a damaged Mars placement, especially when it's in their own charts. Let's say it's aspected by Saturn or Pluto or Rahu or Ketu, or it's in a weak sign, debilitated, let's say. The man in question will feel insecure about his masculinity, even though he will not say this. This is kind of like what is going on psychologically. So, of course, for a man who feels insecure about his masculinity, coming into contact with a woman's Pluto, which is her personal power, will make him feel very, very threatened. And again, so like I said, Mars being Mars, this person is very likely to use violence, especially if they know that they can get away with it, and especially if there are other placements in this person's chart that might indicate that he is going to be violent. I mean, this is what I noticed, and also to a lesser extent, like I said, other planets, especially the moon. Why the moon and not Venus? Well, the moon, again, is a very vulnerable placement, and much like, similarly to what I have described in the video that I made about Moon-Mars conjunctions and Moon-Mars aspects in synastry, there I pointed out the fact that when it's reversed, when it's the woman's Mars aspecting the man's moon, it could sometimes lead to jealousy, obsessiveness, violence, because the man in question feels his vulnerable side being attacked by a woman's power and masculine side, which is shown by her Mars. And the similar thing happens when the man's moon is aspected by a woman's Pluto. It could go the other way around, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be the man being the perpetrator and the woman being the victim. But this is usually what happens in these cases. So when the man is the moon and the woman is Pluto, will, like, the moon will feel exposed. That's the way, the planet the person whose planet is being conjunct by somebody else's Pluto will feel like exposed and vulnerable in the face of Pluto's power and penetrating inquisitiveness and ability to see down to their soul. And especially when a man already has a troubled moon placement, which could potentially already indicate some tendency towards violence, it could be like the last drop, or like the cherry on top of the whole thing. Or like the straw that broke the camel's back, it's like the last thing that they need to snap if this person, already has a damaged moon and has some kind of insecurities going on about their personal power and all this stuff. Because bear in mind the fact that a lot of narcissists end up becoming narcissists because they were abused. So especially when it comes to men, this could take all kind, like the most hideous forms of abuse are, you know, physical or sexual abuse, and especially for a man, this calls into question their sense of masculinity, and they feel emasculated and all that stuff. So there will be, this is why it triggers this whole like power play crap that they usually seek in relationships. So they will, some narcissists will purposefully seek women that they perceive to be powerful, confident, just so that they can break them down and gain a sense of satisfaction and power out of this process. Right. You can get more details about this like in other things, like other videos or articles on psychology. And just for fun, I looked at Marilyn Manson's chart, and I looked at Esme Bianco and Evan Rachel Wood's charts, and surprise, surprise, their Plutos are conjunct Manson's Mars. Namely, so Evan Rachel's Pluto is conjunct his Mars within 3 degrees, and Esme Bianco's Pluto is conjunct his Mars within like 10 degrees or something. And his Mars happened to be in Libra, which means that it's debilitated by sign, which tends to show a person who already has some kind of a insecurity about his level of masculinity. Of course, this in itself doesn't show, but, well, he has other things in his Karakamsha that also might show a potentially violent person, but... and if you're interested in learning more about Karakamsha, check out the video that I made on Arudha Lagna and Karakamsha and soul dissection, I think it's called. Yeah, this is like just an extra detail. Obviously, if you want some kind of detailed like natal chart done for Manson or Manson or like any celebrity, please let me know in the comment section. This is it, and this is all I wanted to say, so I would be curious to hear if you have gone through similar situations or what you think about this, if you think it's accurate, or maybe you think this hasn't been your experience, like maybe you've had happy relationships when you've had your Pluto conjunct somebody else's Mars. I would be curious to hear that, so please let me know in the comment section. And once again, if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of subjects. Please check out the video description. I will leave the contact information there. Thank you.